my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today's luncheon. Ron McCoy was appointed Princeton University's architect in August of 2008. He provides overall guidance for the planning, architecture, and landscape of the Princeton campus. He was part of the facilities team that delivered dozens of major new projects that were envisioned in the 2016 campus plan. He led the effort to create the 2026 campus plan, which provides a comprehensive planning framework. Ron provides overall design leadership of the current generation of capital projects, providing over 3 million square footage of development that have been designed to meet the university's strategic properties. So it's my pleasure to bring up Ron McCoy.
So I'm going to start a little bit just by telling you what the university architect does at Princeton University. Our office sits at the intersection between the strategic planning aspect of the university and the physical space of the university. So our job is to interpret university values and give those values, give those as direction to the architects that we select to do the projects on campus. Now, what that means is that there's architects come to us with their own sense of what their priorities are. There's a famous architect, Rem Koolhaas, who said that the architects negotiate their values in the context of values defined by others. So my job is to be the translator between the values of Princeton University and the architects that we select to help plan the campus, design the landscapes, the architecture, and the interiors of campus. So that's the role of the university architect at Princeton. So in thinking about what I could talk about here today, I was asked to talk about the growth of the university, which you can see if you're anywhere near the university. You can see the growth of the university. Whenever I talk about the campus or talk about Princeton University growth, the first question comes up is, why do universities grow? So I thought I'd take a step back from what we're doing to describe a little bit about why universities grow. And then I thought I'd take another step back and say, what is a university? So I'm coming back to the big picture here, and then I'll come back and talk about what we do. So universities are mission-driven institutions. They're among the oldest institutions in the world. The universities and organized religion are the oldest institutions. Higher education, colleges and universities really began 900 to 1,000 years ago in places like Cairo, Bologna, Oxford, Cambridge. And Princeton is a version of the American university. So we're a baby in the context of those universities, although we're getting close to 300 years old. If you were to look at the distinguished or distinctive accomplishments of American culture, you would put the American University on that list of distinguished accomplishments. It's a unique brand of education, and it's emulated all over the world. So a list of American accomplishments would be incomplete if it didn't have the American University on it. So I'm going to say a few things about the institution that come from some readings that I've done from an English professor at Columbia University named Andrew Delbanco. Years ago, I used to teach a class called Architecture in the American College Campus, and one of the foundational books in this class was the book by Delbanco, because it does a great job of describing what a college is. I think the title of the book is College, What It Was, What It Is, and What It Should Be. So if you have children who are going to college, or you're getting ready to send someone to college, or you find yourself sitting at a dinner party, maybe next to a Supreme Court justice, and you want to talk about college, maybe what Delbanco has to say would be interesting. I'll get to that in just a minute. There's also another aspect in the sort of genre of the American university. Some universities are intentionally designed and located to be a place apart, away from the cities, away from what were perceived to be the distractions of cities. And Princeton University is one of those universities. Other universities like Rutgers are of the city. And there are lots of different flavors of these institutions. In fact, there are 4,000 institutions of higher education in the United States. And so each one has a different mission, a different role, a different sense of purpose. Now, in the history of the American university, there are three primary forces that have shaped the institutions as they have evolved. One is this tradition of liberal arts that comes from the United Kingdom, primarily Cambridge and Oxford. And they were founded to advance learning and carry it into perpetuity. So that's a kind of foundational liberal arts education. The next great influence on the American university is the Morrill Grant and the land-grant universities of the Act of 1862. And what that does is builds upon the kind of cornerstone of a liberal arts education and adds service and adds research. The Morrill Act particularly advanced research related to the kind of industry of the time, which were agricultural arts and mechanical arts. And that's the sort of second great impetus into the history of the American university. Ezra Cornell, for example, at Cornell, said that Cornell should be able to teach any subject to any student. So that's the kind of breadth of the ambitions of the American university under the land grant era. The next big sort of influence on the institutions of higher learning in the United States was the German research university. These universities were not related to pure research, but they're related in advancing applied research, particularly in helping the German economy transfer into a powerhouse related to scientific research and industrialization. And that's the end of the 19th century. In the United States, then, that gets formed into places like Johns Hopkins, which founds itself around graduate education, which is dedicated to the kind of research that was inspired by the German research institution. So all these come together in American universities, the 4,000 different versions of higher ed that I've talked about, and they form unique visions and missions of those institutions. I'm going to talk a little bit about just the Princeton mission here. I'm going to read what Princeton University's mission is, now that you have that foundation about higher education. So the mission of Princeton University is to advance learning through scholarship, research, and teaching of unsurpassed quality, with an emphasis on undergraduate and doctoral education that's distinctive among the world's great universities, and with a pervasive commitment to serve the nation and the world. So in this mission, you see the kind of cornerstone again of the liberal arts education, which is what Princeton is founded on. Princeton at its core is a liberal arts institution. On top of that is the doctoral research, which advances knowledge. And that then is the mission of the university. The sort of informal motto of the university, you may know, is Princeton in the nation's service and in the service of humanity. It used to say in the service of the nation, service of the world, until Sonia Sotomayor gave a talk in 2014, and she encouraged the university to change that informal motto to in service of humanity. And then we have clever people like the poet Paul Muldoon in the Lewis Center for the Arts, who changed the mission of the Lewis Center for the Arts to be in service of the imagination. So the theme of the nation played its way through Princeton missions. So let me now talk a little bit about some of the facts and figures about Princeton University. Founded in 1746, the campus was created in 1756. We currently have 4,700 undergraduates and about 3,100 graduate students. We're the largest employer in the town of Princeton. We have 7,300 benefits-eligible employees. We have 2,400 acres in 3 municipalities, Plainsboro, West Windsor, and Princeton. Our operating budget is $2.5 billion a year. Our endowment is $32.5 billion. These are all 2021 figures. And if you want to dig deeper into this, you can go to the report of the Finance and Treasury, Office of Finance and Treasury at Princeton University, publishes an annual report with these kinds of facts and figures. 80% of our students graduate debt-free. Those students who do graduate with debt, the average debt among those students is $9,000. We have probably the most generous tuition and financial aid package in the United States, and we're continuing to advance it. 22% of the class of 2025, 22% of those students are Pell-eligible students. 48.5% of our undergraduates are from minority groups. 96% of our undergraduates live on campus, so that's a hugely important distinctive factor about Princeton University. Other liberal arts colleges do this as well. But creating a community on campus is what we try to do. 70% of our regularly enrolled graduate students are also housed on campus. That's a kind of function of the kind of environment we have, the sort of housing available. We see it as a competitive advantage to be able to house that many graduate students on the Princeton campus. It's more than any of our peers can do for their graduate students. So that's really positive. We have, on an annual basis, $340 million in federal government grants and contracts, and another $60 million annually in private sector grants. Okay, so now why do universities grow? They grow to serve their mission. And as I said, the three factors are access to knowledge, which means allowing more students to have access to that knowledge, growth of that knowledge, which is the scientific and research enterprise of the institution, and the nature of disciplines and interdisciplinarity are factors in that. And then the third factor, I would say, is service, engagement, and innovation. Those are the three primary factors that lead to the growth of universities. At Princeton, we have an interesting chart in campus. Since I don't have slides, I'm going to do a lot of diagrams with my fingers. We have a chart that shows the growth of the university from 1900 to 2027. So we've projected out a little bit. Over that period of time, we will grow from 750 students that we had on the university in 1900 to 8,400 students. So that's a little bit more than a tenfold increase in the number of students. In terms of the size of the campus, from 1900 to 2027, the university will have grown from 800,000 square feet of facilities at the turn of the 20th century to now a little bit more than 14 million square feet. What's interesting there is that you see that up until post-World War II and the big boom in federally funded research, the population of the students and the size of the university kind of grew in parallel, sort of one-to-one. Since that time, there was a great disparity because research enterprises require more space per student than just a kind of typical undergraduate residential campus. And so in the current generation of growth, we are growing by a significant amount of growth. We have about a 10% growth in students in the current generation. We're adding 500 students to the university, and about a 26% growth in facilities. So that's far outpacing the kind of one-to-one growth of facilities to students. And that's all about the sort of types of facilities that we're building, and I'll talk about that in a second. The current generation of construction, that translates into a kind of robust contractor workforce on campus. We're going to hit our peak in 2023 and 2024. I'm looking at our legal team over here. We will have nearly 1,400 contractors, workers on campus every day in that period from 2023 to 2024. Looking backwards in 2021 at that financial report from the Office of Finance and Treasury, we spent $420 million in the fiscal year 2021. As we hit that peak, we're going to significantly increase that annual expenditure in dollars as we go to 23 and 24. So those are the kinds of investments and economic impact that we're having in the region. Now let me talk a little bit more about just planning the Princeton campus. And I want to contrast it to a city. So universities are cities within cities or cities in the country. That's the nature of a university. It's a small city. So if you take our students and our faculty and our staff, we are a small city. The interesting difference is that in a city, you have a cacophony of players, each trying to pursue their own agendas, their own identity, their own expression. It's a robust cacophony of individualism. And it's not a bad thing at all. I'm not saying universities are good and cities are bad, but it's just interesting to look at the contrast. Cities are held together by a strong planning department. Very few cities, unfortunately, can afford the cost of a strong planning department. And so that cacophony of individual actions is a wild ride to keep it under control and to lead it with strong planning. If you contrast that to an institution of higher education, like a Princeton University, you have a single institution managing that growth over a period of time. And so when you look at a university, you can look at it as a historical record of where it's been and the ambitions of that historical record, where it is today and what it's aspiring to accomplish today, and where it's heading toward tomorrow. So that's just an interesting contrast between the nature of a city and a university. Again, back to our office, the Office of the University Architect. As I said, we're at that intersection between strategic initiatives and the growth of the physical campus. And what we do is we're one of three primary planning efforts that lead the growth of the university. The most important planning effort is the strategic planning effort that the president and the senior administration and the trustees lead for the university. That planning effort began in 2014 and went through 2016. And it constituted 15 different faculty or faculty and staff committees. And each committee dealt with a particular aspect of the university around a series of questions. What's the future of graduate research? What's the future of the residential college? What's the future of entrepreneurship? What's the future of innovation? What's the future of humanities? So on and so forth. Science, engineering, things like that. That strategic plan resulted in a 25-page white paper you can find on the Princeton website. Each of those 15 committees submitted a kind of set of proposals to the institution, and the provost and the president wrote a response to each one of those proposals, and you can also find those online. So you can see how these sort of chart the path of the future of the university. Campus planning intersects with that strategic planning. We are fortunate to have campus planning and strategic planning happening concurrently. And so they were iterating off of each other. So we would test things from a strategic point of view against campus planning opportunities. The campus plan is really a framework of possibilities. It's not a roadmap that says you will do this here and do that there. It's a framework that says this is what you could do here, and this is where you might grow in response to a particular initiative. And then the third planning effort, the most really a very important one, is obviously the capital planning. That's the resources that we have available to design and build the facilities that we build. We work on a roughly 10-year capital planning horizon. So we're currently, it's only the second time in the history of the university we've had this discipline. So we're in Capital Plan 2. First capital plan was Capital Plan 1 that guided us from 2006 to 2016. Capital Plan 2 is guiding us from 2016 to 2030, so we kind of stretched it. We stretched it because for the first few years we weren't building anything, we were planning and designing, and we decided to kind of stretch the horizon of that capital plan. The capital plan obviously draws from the endowment and the resources that we have available to create and enable the strategic visions of the university, and the campus plan gives guidance to how to do that. We, with our trustees, we revisit that capital plan annually, and we occasionally will have a kind of major opportunity to adjust the envelope of that capital plan to see if we're going to spend more money on that capital plan. So I'm now going to switch and say, okay, so what will the university be known for in the future? So one way of describing the university growth is to look backwards over the past, say, 2006 to 2016 time period, and look forward to the current generation of growth, and give you a sense of what I think the university would say are the most important accomplishments in those areas. And then, if you were an art historian, you could read the history of a discipline. If you're a historian of campuses, you can read the history of the campus in what they build and how they build it and why they build it. So that's what I'm going to try to shed a little light on here. So between 2006 and 2016, I think these are the kind of 5 or 6 main accomplishments of the university. Rebuilding a world-class faculty in chemistry. We moved from a building that was designed in 1928 to a building that was opened in 2010. And if you were to step into the 1928 building and compare it to the 2010 building, the difference would be shocking. You know, the kind of, obviously, chemistry and the needs of chemistry evolve over time. So the disciplinary evolution and the need to create state-of-the-art facilities is a fundamental force. We also often are proud of the Nobel Prize winners that are associated with Princeton. We count them as either faculty, graduates, or past faculty. In 2015, 18, and 21, the Nobel Prize in chemistry went to people, faculty, and students related to Princeton. Second big initiative is around creating a home for neuroscience and psychology. This is a kind of constant theme in the growth of universities, which are new disciplines. Neuroscience is a new and emerging discipline, and it brings together departments in applied math, chemistry, computer science, engineering, molecular biology, physics, philosophy, and psychology. Neuroscience is interested in the brain as the kind of center of our consciousness and our behavior, and as an organ in our body. So it brings together all those disciplines. That interdisciplinarity is a fundamental reason for much of the growth that the university goes through. We created a new home for economics. which has had 10 Nobel laureates connected to faculty over the past 22 years. Economics had grown to a point where it was spread all over the campus. We brought them together in a single home. And so that was a huge, so that they could have more intellectual interaction among each other. In that same sort of complex of buildings, we created a new home for international initiatives. Princeton is a global university with one campus, but students and faculty will travel around the world, and that could be around anything from robotics to English literature to ecologies of fisheries to the origins of the universe. Faculty and students are traveling around the world, and this international home that we created for them is supporting all that travel outward and travel back for colleagues. So that's another major accomplishment. And then the Andlinger Center for Energy and Environment, and this is a huge theme. If you look, I think, thematically over the last 15, 20 years, the university's commitment to energy and sustainability is enormous. The Andlinger Center is focused on research topics such as energy production and storage and transmission of energy, advanced fuels using microorganisms, carbon capture, and behavioral economics that lead to policy change in environmental initiatives. All right, now if you look at the current generation, so to say 2016 to 2020, 2030, these are the things that we're building. These are the things that I think history will look back on the university for these aspects. On that theme of sustainability, we're committing ourselves to being carbon neutral by 2046. This is a massive investment in a geoexchange heat pump system, which will make us our primary source of energy for heating and cooling buildings will be the earth, taking energy out of buildings in the summer, putting it in the earth as a bank over the season, pulling it out in the winter, and using it to heat buildings in the winter, and through the system also to cool buildings in the summer. This is a massive disruption on our campus right now as we build new energy facilities. We are drilling thousands of geoexchange wells throughout the campus, 850 feet deep. We have a colleague who has estimated that we are slightly heating up 50 billion pounds of rock underneath the campus. That's a sort of thermal battery for that hot energy, and that we draw from to heat the buildings in the winter. So that's a massive investment. We are also then, in terms of academic enterprise, we have a new home for environmental studies in the School of Engineering, which includes the High Meadows Environmental Institute, which is dedicated to understanding the Earth as a sort of complex system influenced by human activities. Geosciences Department serves as a central focus of Earth, atmospheric, and oceanographic sciences at Princeton. Ecology and evolutionary biology is dedicated to some of the most urgent problems facing society, including climate change and the stressing of ecosystems. Bioengineering is dedicated to developing tools and technologies that will enable scientists to interface with living matter at every scale. Chemical and biological engineering will engage with cellular and tissue engineering, new material research at the molecular levels. And then backing out of the arts and out of the sciences, we come to the new University Art Museum, which will be a gateway to the humanities at Princeton and a home for the liberal arts foundation of the university, and also a very welcoming place for the community. Then we are building a new home for computer sciences. And again, in terms of this theme of interdisciplinarity, it brings together the Department of Computer Science, the Center for Information Technology and Policy, Center for Statistics and Machine Learning, and the Princeton Institute for Computer Science and Engineering. So again, you see it crossing disciplines. Enrollment in computer science has tripled in the last decade, and the number of students taking courses in computer science has quadrupled. So this is a huge influence on the campus. And what's happening is that knowledge in computer science then is going out and informing all those other disciplines. And so computer science is not just a discipline in a silo, but it's a discipline that enables the rest of the university. Finally, on entrepreneurship. This is something that we are, I'd say, bubbling with, and it's really the motivating force between the development of what we call the Lake Campus development, the Meadows neighborhood in West Windsor. Princeton has defined entrepreneurship as initiation of transformations and risk-taking and the creation of value-creating organizations. We are preparing our students and faculty to achieve the highest standards of excellence of entrepreneurial activities as a service to the nation and as a service to humanity. And those are some of the activities that will take place on this Meadows neighborhood on the Lake campus as we move forward. So I think I'll let it rest there, and I hope I've given you a sense of our university in the context of other universities, the kind of academic and intellectual community we're trying to create at Princeton. So thank you. I think we have time for questions.